And we're back with more News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this midweek edition of the Mark Petrona Show. Well, the saga of Tamara Lich continues, her courtroom battles, now accused of violating her bail, from what I understand, basically because she was in the same room or in the same photo as somebody that she should not have been associating with at that particular time. They are really putting her through the ringer. And joining us to talk a little bit about it is BJ Dichter, who, of course, was very much instrumental in the organizing of the trucker convoy, the communications aspect of it, certainly. And so as you look at what's going on to Tamara, what's going through your head right now, BJ?
It's frustrating. It's frustrating for a number of reasons. Obviously, she's political pawn, and the government, the blackface regime, once again, is targeting Indigenous women. I think they just do it as a hobby because they have so much contempt for Indigenous people, at least so it seems. I also wish people took more care and were a lot more careful around her. I personally think, when I saw the award ceremony, I thought, maybe you should do this a little bit later. Let's wait, because we know with communists and the extreme left, they're going to look for any little opportunity, any loophole, because that's how they gain power, to oppress their opposition. And when I saw that, I absolutely was not going to go to it, just because I know how they think on the other side. I know how they operate, and I didn't want to put her at any risk. But it is what it is. It's still unfair. It's still complete nonsense. And she's a political target.
Okay, what's her status at the moment?
Right now, she is being held again. This will be, 10 days that she will have been held. I think it was 6 days in Medicine Hat, now 4 days in Ontario, held in jail, believe it or not, and awaiting her the decision on her bail hearing. And you know what's frustrating about it is yesterday I had a conversation with a police officer who I know of. I've mentioned many times, I know many police officers I'm friends with. And this cop was so infuriated and incensed. This is somebody who has worked in homicide. And he said to me, you know what is just absolutely disgusting about what's going on? He said, I in particular had a case where we had somebody who was on murder charges. And that person, murder charges, and we know he did it, was out on bail the next day. And the week after, we picked him up again for possession of an illegal firearm, and he was out on bail again. And then it happened again, another illegal firearm. It happened, in this case, 7 times. These people are out the next day. But if you speak out against this racialized form of communism that is infecting our politics in Canada, then you are going to have the full force of the law and more so against you, And what's ironic is I sent you a video before of just as before the trucks rolled into Ottawa, and it was the Ottawa City Council was slowly, and the police, whatever, and Mayor Watson was there as well, discussing how, you know what, these truckers have the right to protest, freedom of speech, whatever. That's why they were helping us. They helped us park our trucks. So when they say, we locked down the city, bullshit. You were the ones who told us where to park. And that's why we had routes for emergency vehicles and everybody could get around. So this rewrite of history from politicians is going to blow up in their face, because as time goes on, people are realizing what's been going on and what the truth is.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning in its brazenness that they're using her as a target, that they've treated her. She's a political prisoner. Here's a tweet from Ezra Levant. The judge could have issued an oral judgment with written reasons to come later, or he could have taken the night to think about it. But he'll take tonight and tomorrow night and Thursday night, because he's so busy. Tamara Lich can rot in jail. And so that's the way they are treating her, like garbage. But this is going around the world. And, people are are coming around to the idea that there's a vindictiveness, there's a hatefulness here in their treatment of Tamara Lich. She's become really a symbol of the resistance, and I guess that's why they want to crush her. They want to demoralize those who oppose this regime. But they're also seeing what's going on in Europe, in the Netherlands and elsewhere now, as this protest there, the farmers, the truckers there, the farmers and fishermen, now others. I mean, it did occur to me as I look at what's going on with the protest in Europe, that if organized labor and others had gathered in support of the truckers, Trudeau would be gone by now. You know, there would have been a real mass uprising against this government. I think they were afraid that that was going to happen. But in retrospect, I think the Dutch are really showing the world how it's done. You know, you don't just say, well, it's every man for himself. It's, hey, we're all in it together. And it's the farmers one day, it's the fishermen, you know, bring in the truckers, bring in other unions, and let's beat these people. And I think they're showing everybody how it's done. You ever wonder about that? If there had been, say, broader support? I mean, you had tons of support. Millions of Canadians were supportive of you, but they didn't take to the streets, perhaps in the same way as the Dutch are doing in terms of having organized groups, labor groups, and so forth, participating in this. What do you think when you look at what's going on in the Netherlands?
I think there's a lot of similarities between the Netherlands and Canada, because for a fact, and we had so many farmers not only, you know, supporting us, but there were farmers that went out and had their own protests, and some of them even blockaded some of the ports. We found out, somebody leaked this to me during the protest, that, you know, remember the mayor, and I think it was Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, one of the two, the premier implemented some rule that it is, whatever the fine was, increased, I think $100,000, memory serves, to engage in a convoy. But many of those truckers in that province had family in the fisheries industry. So what did the fisheries industry do? Well, they all hopped in their boats and they sealed off the ports. So there was at one point 120 points of entry into Canada were blocked from all different groups. You know, everybody was doing their own sort of decentralized protest around this whole basic principle of freedom. And what's interesting about this, you know, from my perspective, and this is why I think the political class is so worried, and they should be worried, is I first saw this, you know, when I lived in South America, when Chavez got to power, and the initial massive protests against Chavez were from middle and working class people, which is unusual, because those of us who are middle class and working class people, we don't have time to go protest. That is the leftist domain. That is for a certain segment of the population who do that for a profession. Well, this was the first time I saw in my life that the middle and working class were protesting. Well, who are truckers and farmers? That's middle and working class people. So this is the first time the political class is seeing that the voter base that they try to appeal to the most is not only turning at them in the polls, but they're rising up and protesting. And that is a very serious problem for them. And yet, like all extremists, they just double down, keep doing the same thing, and can't figure out why things don't change. And that's exactly what's happening in the Netherlands. You're getting the working and educated class that is rising up. And that's a problem for them.
But it didn't work ultimately in Venezuela. I mean, the communists ended up winning and destroying the country. And that's kind of Trudeau's game plan, isn't it? Just take a wrecking ball to the country. And that's why you see the country falling apart, you know, from the airports, infrastructure that's not functioning, the bureaucracy, the cops, you know, shortages in terms of staff, you know, off the charts inflation, fuel, all this stuff happening. And it's happening, I believe, intentionally. These people are taking a wrecking ball to the country, destroying it, and then out of the rubble, they think that they can impose their view of the world, which is going to be draconian and anti-freedom, and that's why they hate you and they hate others. But my problem is that when you bring up the Venezuelan example, at the end of the day, the good guys didn't win; they lost.
Yeah, but you're comparing apples and oranges. Venezuela and the institutions of Western countries versus Venezuela are very different. We do tend to try to do this historical rewrite in the Western world that Venezuela was the wealthiest country in Latin America, and no oil. It had a lot of oil, but massive corruption problems for generations. And Caracas was one of the most dangerous cities in the world for several decades. So I think our institutional strength in Canada is the problem for the Klaus Schwab and Justin Trudeau problem. They're trying to break through, but I think our institutions, I mean, they're quite robust, but we all know they're under attack. The universities have been under attack as well. But I think we're going to have a little bit, I hope we'll be a little bit more successful in the Western world just because of the robustness of our institutions. Not to say that they're not under full attack, because they are. We all know it.
I agree. We are in better shape. I think our economy is not as reliant on oil as Venezuela's was, but it's still
reliant on asset prices.
And so they're destroying, they're undermining the resource sector. They're printing like crazy. They're doing all the things that will eventually wreck the economy. I mean, you cannot run up the kind of debt that the Trudeau is doing and not have a price to pay down the road. You can't inflate inflate the currency and devalue the currency ultimately. I mean, they're doing all the things that are counter to the good of the country. And I can't believe that people don't see that. I mean, if you were to take the positive actions that would be designed to help Canada, this guy's going to do the opposite. And I think at some point they're going to start arresting. I believe it's somewhere down in the checklist, arresting people, not just like Tamara Lich, but opposition leaders. I mean, that's kind of part of their agenda, and I hope we don't get to that point. But it's where they're going, as well as I do. I mean, you look at what happened in Venezuela, other countries coming under attack by these scumbags. Well, guess what? He's trying to do it in Canada. He's trying to make Canada the poster boy for globalism, for whatever system, this reset, this build back better that they're trying to ram through. And he's doing it to the best of his ability. And so we have to push back. And Tamara is a symbol of that. She's caught in the center of all of that. And I don't know. Do you think that she's going to be out? I mean, which way is this going to go, do you think? Do you want to make a prediction?
I'm not usually a fan of speculation time.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Legal matters. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can see where it should go practically, but let's just let the process run its course.
Okay, it was an unfair question you asking you to predict which ways it's going to go. I understand why you can't.
That's what pundits on CNN do, and I hate them. So let's just let's see what happens, and then kind of do an intellectual analysis of what actually occurred, as opposed to just talking out of our asses like the CBC.
Yeah, I know. I do tend to speculate a little bit on the show because I think people kind of wonder, and they look forward and they go, where is this headed? And sometimes you just have to wait it out, and I understand that.
Well, can I give you what we call in internet culture a white pill, some good news?
Okay.
Right? Good news.
Sure, I'm all in. Go ahead.
You'll notice that various cabinet ministers have been traveling the country, making announcements and throwing away your money and everybody's tax money at all their little liberal extremist leftist perks, and different. There's the Marco Mendicino did the gun announcement and all that sort of stuff. They're gearing up for an election. Now, we're going to have an election before the end of the year, like I said. Jack Mead is done. The entire Sikh community has turned on him. He's an embarrassment. And to anybody who's Sikh who's listening to this, who's undecided, I would say, I had a very close friend who was Sikh growing up, so I know a little bit about what he taught me about the culture. That's a culture and a religion that's built on strength and being a warrior. You have the weakest weasel of a person globally representing Sikhs. He bows down and plays the victim card and identity politics and all this leftist stuff. And he's the water boy for Justin Trudeau. Is that what Sikh traditions are about? Really? Because that's not what I learned about Sikh culture. So and I think that's why you're seeing so much pushback against him. And once he's out, the whole house of cards folds. And we both know Pierre is going to be the leader of the Conservative Party, unless it's even more corrupt than I think it is.
Well, it's not going to be Brown now, so he's out. But Patrick Brown's
guaranteed, by the way, the people funding Brown are going to sue the party. And my advice to the party is let them do it and make sure they're never back in the party ever again.
Okay. So you are making a prediction, but about the election, you think that we're going to the polls before the end of the year?
We will be an election in November. I was told that just after the Freedom Convoy by, I still have friends within the Conservative Party. There are still good people in that party. And they told me that, we'll be in election in November, and everything seems to be following that trajectory right now. The government, Trudeau is a laughingstock on the international community. He's an embarrassment even to liberals. Look, I live in a very liberal neighborhood here. And finally, people are willing to, they do one of two things. The cognitive dissonance thing is, well, all politicians are the same, so they're not coming out to vote anymore. Or they're like, we had some hopes for Justin, but Justin is either too weak or Justin is just completely detached and has no clue what's going on in the world. And those people are not coming out to vote anymore. So his career is done.
Well,
and that's it.
Well, Benjamin, thank you. I appreciate you coming on the show.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
BJ Dichter. And I got to take a quick commercial break. Back with more on Newstalk Saga 960 and the Mark Petrona Show after this.